this is otherwise state champ Alex Thompson. This is Josh Elwer from the University of Northern Iowa, and you're listening to Potentially Dangerous on IA Russell.
Hey! Is this heaven?
No. It's Iowa.
From high school to international wrestling, on the mat and beyond, this is the Potentially Dangerous podcast with the guys from IA Russell.
If you're a fighter, you like a fight. If you're an American, you like a fight. If you're an Iowa Hawkeye, you know you're going to get a fight.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and all your podcast-friendly apps. And follow us on social media platforms at IA Russell. Time to strap it up and get to the show.
When the whistle go.
Welcome back to Potentially Dangerous, presented by MyHouse. I'm your host, Tony Hager, joined by Ross Barczyk today, and we've got just fires all over the place in the wrestling world. The biggest one in Ames right now. We got the news yesterday that Kevin Jackson would be stepping down after the season. We've seen the press conferences that he had. We've seen the words that Jamie Pollard had said a week prior to this. But, Ross, I did not see this happening before the season got over at all.
Yeah, I think it took everybody by surprise. We got a couple details that, other sources might not have at the moment that we can probably share. But overall, surface level, this kind of blew me away that, Tuesday this news comes out.
Yeah, this is... with the conversations that we were seeing, I think that we all thought that it was going to happen, whether he was fired or stepped down. I think that the way that the press release says, I feel like that was definitely a good move by Jamie Pollard and Kevin Jackson. I feel like everybody handled it the best way they possibly could. And they're in a tough spot. I mean, they got huge recruits coming in that Kevin Jackson and the Paulson boys, Escobedo, went out and they got, and we're already seeing a little bit of backlash from this news that KJ is leaving. The departure or potential departure of Austin Gomez, and we broke the news last night that Jake Allar as well would be seeking his release. But what was interesting from Jake was he asked for this release prior to knowing this knowledge of KJ actually stepping down. So I think that was interesting. Do you think we're going to see anybody else here and this tomorrow? I mean, yesterday was just crazy.
So we can go ahead, just kind of very surface level. What we know, Tony. I think you did a good job yesterday. You tweeted out that Ryan Leisure and Marcus Coleman, Iowa State's two biggest recruits in the state here of Iowa, they're remaining committed to Iowa State. I talked to Jared Berklaren. He remains committed to Iowa State. And as you mentioned, the two big ones, Jake Allar, Austin Gomez, a couple Fargo champions last summer, they're out. They're asking for their release, I should say. I guess I don't know if they'd completely ruled Iowa State out with whoever they're going to put in the head. And then I also reached out to Maryland Prep Ethan Smith. And at this time, he told me he didn't want to say anything whether he's still all in, I guess, as the Cyclones say, or whether he kind of wants to sit back and just kind of take in all the information and make a decision once he has that clear head.
That's what I was thinking we would see. The recruits would find out who that they're looking to bring in. You got to imagine if they do this in season that they're going to go after somebody right away, whether it's in-house with hiring Travis Paulson, Trent Paulson at the helm, maybe head coach, associate head coach. I don't know how they would handle that, but these recruits, after talking to them, I talked to a lot of kids that are on in the program right now that if Travis doesn't get the job, that they might walk too. They're already in the program. So Kanan Storr sent a tweet yesterday about, I sent that tweet out saying that I think if they want to keep the recruits, they need to keep the Paulsons. And he said that he agreed that, yeah, that's exactly what needs to happen. Otherwise, he will look maybe elsewhere. But the time will tell who they're going to bring in. Heck, who knows who the heck they can bring in? The list of candidates who I think deserve the job or would be a good fit or make sense is rather long. I think this is an attractive job still. Be a heck of a rebuild, but it's still an attractive job with a lot of history at Iowa State.
Yeah, and we know. I mean, we got a pretty good source I don't think it's too secret knowledge that they had a team meeting at 2:30 yesterday. Pollard kind of addressed the team that this decision had been made, that and really they just wanted to get this news out there because I think honestly they wanted to give the recruits that were committed a chance to make their decision. I'm sure they thought some kids are going to back out right away, but they were probably hoping that the recruits would understand by saying, hey, we're moving on from KJ. But, by getting this news out there now, all those head coaches or associate head coaches that are looking to move this offseason, by getting this news out there now that this job's open, guys will start looking at this earlier. They might not jump ship, mid-season, but it gives the head coaches to know, like, hey, if I want to put my name in for this job, it's open now. They know that knowledge now, so maybe these recruits won't want to jump ship. So I don't know. It's good that they got this news out, and like you said, there's a lot of potential candidates that we could go into.
Yeah, that coaches the meeting yesterday with Jamie Pollard. Yeah, I think Jamie was getting a lot of pressure. He's been getting a lot of pressure from outside, past donors, people that are season ticket holders now. They don't want to go to a duel and 1-7. They don't want to see that. They don't want to pay season tickets. And you had a conversation with Emil last week or yesterday on Twitter about, would you rather have, a top 10 finish at St. Louis, or would you rather be 20-0 in duels? And I like that conversation because, everyone just says duels don't matter. Well, they do matter, maybe not as far as trophies go or standings or what you get at the end of the year from the NCAA, but it pays your bills. For some programs, duels can be bad for your program because the travel costs, and if you can't bring the fans in, then you are probably losing money. But if you're like Iowa, Penn State, used to be Iowa State, you're bringing in 10,000 fans, you're making money. I know what it costs to rent out Hilton because I've tried. So I know that they're making money. They're not making money with 3,000 fans, I can tell you that.
And just look at, Doug Schwab. He's kind of the easiest example to cherry pick in Iowa. Look at what UNI does to promote their dual team. They're blasting social media. They have a promotion this weekend, I think, that coaches and athletes can get into the Sunday duel for free if they contact UNI in advance. I mean, how you generate interest for your team and you develop that that relationship with wanting to follow these wrestlers is through your duel. So no, it doesn't matter. It's not going to win you a national title. And if it does, the national title is not going to go down in any record book that people look back and refer to you as national champ. You're right. But it does matter for a head coach. It is important. So, when Emil was saying that, I get where he's coming from, but at the same time, like you're saying, it pays the bills. It creates that fan environment, that community that you need to have support for your program. If you're putting out a joke of a dual team every week, people are going to stop showing up. People are going to stop caring. So duels matter because that's the only chance your fans are getting a chance to see you. And, I mean, that's kind of what was happening here. Because KJ's finishes aren't terrible, but they're not great either. So there's a lot going on with this decision.
Oh, it's like you have a duel and you don't start Thomas Gilman, Corey Clark, Brandon Sorensen, Michael Kemmer. You're just having the duel to have the duel, whether you win or lose. Well, no, they're going to wrestle those guys because, one, they're getting experience, and two, fans don't come to watch backups. They want to see the guys that are going to be trying to get All-American status. So, well, let's switch our gears here to who we think can bring the buzz to Iowa State. Who can be that coach that's doing it somewhere else or did do it in the past? I want to get your perspective of who you think, who's on your little short list of just maybe not the top coaches. Cale Sanderson. Yeah, obviously you want to get Cale Sanderson. What are the likely candidates that could maybe be looking for a job?
Likely is probably, there's even a couple big name hires that if I was running a program, I'd call Casey Cunningham and Cody Sanderson at Penn State, even though I got a pretty good feeling that they're happy where they're at in Happy Valley. But I think those are probably the two biggest names to call. But if you want to look at people that might have a good chance of jumping, and Tony, you can jump in whenever you want on this, but I think the big names at the top of the list right now, Chris Bono, former alum at South Dakota State, Kevin Dresser at Virginia Tech, he's got a top 5 program, Iowa roots, and Pat Papalizio out at NC State, coming off a top 5 recruiting class. What are your thoughts on those 3 names?
Yeah, I think those are all 3 guys that would want to maybe come to a bigger conference, maybe a school with a little bit more history, with a fan base in Iowa. If you can put a good product on the mat, you're gonna have 5,000 to 10,000 people coming to your duels, and I don't think they have that at their duels they have right now. So, Pat Papalizio is an attractive one. That program is definitely on the rise. Virginia Tech, obviously, we know what Dresser's doing there. I think he would want to come home, and I think that's definitely an attractive pick. Some other names out there. Obviously, Mark Perry's name always gets brought up when we hear of coaching changes, but something always happens where he either doesn't become the coach, or maybe he doesn't have the interest, or the support's not there. I'm not really sure, but his name always gets brought up. Kids love him. He's a great recruiter, but there's more to just recruiting. You got to be able to orchestrate a program. You got to have scheduling, and there's a lot more to just recruiting. That's what your assistant coaches are for. And when you slide into that role, it's not easy. So, but I think Mark Perry should be on that list. There's another name out there that maybe people might have forgot about, Drew Periano. Drew Periano, Northwestern. That's a guy that doesn't have a job right now. Not really sure what happened at Northwestern, but he was able to recruit some good kids. That could be a guy that could be definitely looking for a job. I did talk to him, actually, and he would definitely be interested in the job. But there's got to be some support there from the athletic department. So those are a couple names. A name that I haven't seen anybody really talking about would be Eric Guerrero from Oklahoma State. He's an associate head coach there, but whatever that title is or whatever he gets paid, at the end of the day, it's John Smith's program. So does he want it to be a program that's his program? He's the guy. He's been with Okie State for how long now? And everything's been great. I think he's probably happy where he's at, but maybe that's a guy that maybe would throw his hat put his name in the hat there. What do you think about Guerrero? Guerrero
would be, he's definitely on the candidates you want to give a call, see if there's interest. My first impression of Guerrero is, like you said, he's been at Okie State for how long? I'm not sure how long John Smith's planning on coaching, but you have to assume that Guerrero's put himself into a position where he's also kind of the lead guy to maybe assume that Okie State role if John Smith decides that, he wants to hang it up, be done. So I think Guerrero, I don't know if I really see that one happening. I kind of want to go back to Dresser because I was, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't even float this idea. But I saw somebody, kind of mention to you, what about Ryan Morningstar, And I love Coach Starr. I don't think that's kind of any trade secret there. But just kind of thinking about Kevin Dresser, if he came back to Iowa, if he brought Morningstar on to be his head assistant, I think that would just be a rock star hire. Because I think Morningstar is going to do huge things in the sport. There's a couple other, lead assistant guys out there besides Guerrero. I think Jay Jaggers at Ohio State's a pretty big name that should be looked at. Damian Hahn of Cornell, another name that always seems to come up. And maybe you take a guy like Hahn who, he doesn't really – I'm trying to think of how I want to put this, but, he doesn't really have that big face of a program out at Cornell as a lot of other associate head coaches. So I kind of feel like Damian Hahn could be kind of like what Jim Heffernan is at Illinois, and then you have like this other assistant with Hahn, like a kind of like Mark Perry does at Illinois. He's kind of like, when you think of Illinois, a lot of people just go straight to Mark Perry. They kind of forget Heffernan is the head coach there. So I think Damian Hahn would be an interesting guy. Jordan Burroughs is focused on training, and I saw David Taylor tweeted today that he's focused solely on training too. So kind of want to nip those in the bud too.
What about a guy like Jake Herbert or Ben Askren? Guys who I think kids would grab a hold of. Those are two guys that I think Askren's UFC career is non-existent, so this could be an opportunity for him to, I don't know where he's fighting now, but this could be an opportunity for him to maybe get a coaching role. He's doing really great things with the Askren Academy, so maybe he could bring that to Iowa State. It's up in Wisconsin, I believe, so that's a couple names that I've heard as well. Herbert wouldn't be bad. I think, does, with the experience of coaching, how much does Pollard weigh his coaching on? Does he want head coaching experience? Does he want accolades? It'll be interesting to see what route he goes. Ultimately, I'm thinking about this. I mean, not even 24 hours now. I think what they'll end up doing is they will talk to the Paulsons, find out if there's any interest there to stay maybe at their same role, and then bring in somebody else. Because if they leave and they bring a new coach, then you're in trouble with recruiting. Do you hire Travis Paulson as the head coach? Is that a big enough name to make a big splash? I don't know. I don't know what kids are looking for these days, but I think you got to keep Paulsons on that staff. And I know the Paulsons have thrown around the idea of going somewhere else prior to this season, with some information that I have. So I don't think they applied anywhere, but I know that they would want a head job. So would they stick around at an assistant role? So Iowa State's in a real bad spot. But I hope they get it figured out, because I hope Iowa State wrestling gets great again, because that's only better for our sport in Iowa.
100%. And you kind of brought up Askren, and that makes me think about the other big club coach in the national news, and that's Jody Strittmatter. And I kind of wanted to bring up something that Eric Knopsider of PA Power Wrestling out there in Pennsylvania said, that Jody wasn't interested in the Pitt job, which is right there, and he coaches at UPitt, Johnstown, the D2 school. He runs the Young Guns Wrestling Club, and he said he had no interest in leaving where he was at to go to Pitt. I know Iowa State probably has a better financial package to give to Jody. They have an established RTC they could offer Jody, but that was another option I saw floated out online and on Twitter that I really don't see happening. I think Jody's really happy in Pennsylvania, and I'm not sure he has that aspiration to be a college coach. I think he's really happy a head college coach, I should say. I think he's really happy where he's at.
He's got a pretty damn good gig. So
yeah, most of his club guys are ranked number 1 and number 2, and we saw 2 of those guys square off last week, Iowa, Penn State.
Yeah. And I was on KXNO Sports Fanatics yesterday after this news kind of broke, and they brought up Nick Mitchell. Would Nick Mitchell from Grandview be interested in just moving half hour up the road to Ames? He almost went in and beat Iowa State. Brandon Wright makes weight, that duel. Iowa State loses to Grandview. So, did Pollard forget about that? Did he pay attention to that duel? I don't know. Nick Mitchell obviously is doing the best job. There's no flaws in what he's been able to do. I mean, you can't pinpoint. Obviously, some individuals haven't lived up to what they could have done, but that's on the individual. I think Nick Mitchell is bringing out the best in every single athlete he has. We've seen him take athletes from Iowa State and build them into NAIA national champs. Different level, obviously, of athletes. We go to Midlands, Grandview didn't do very good there, but that's just a matter of having the talent. What do you think of Nick? Do you think Nick Mitchell is ready for a D1 shot?
Oh man, way to put me in a tight spot there, Tony. Feel like you got that closer tied to be asking this question too. As far as my opinion goes, I think Nick Mitchell's a great coach. I think he does a lot with what he has. I think he's developed Grandview into a fantastic program. I mean, look at the Viking Wrestling Club and all the support he's been able to generate for that. He's been able to bring in a guy that was runner-up for our World Team Trials, Joe Colon. He's been able to bring him into the Viking Wrestling Club and the Grandview staff. So, and like you said, he's taken a lot of those Iowa State guys and developed them very well. They still go out and compete at the Midlands. I mean, so it's not like, he's taken these guys that leave Iowa State and they only beat up on NAIA kids. They go out into those D1 tournaments and they perform where you would expect them to. Is he ready for a D1 job? Man, I don't know. That's quite a jump. There's a lot more involved with that, I'm sure. Could he be successful? Yeah, I think he could, but I think, putting him in the spot of being in a power program, Iowa State's got that tradition, that financial backing that makes it a marquee job. I think that's asking quite a bit from Nick Mitchell, but I think he could be successful. I just don't know, what the probability is, I guess.
Yeah, I know he's got great support from boosters, and you never know, what those boosters are paying him behind, to support that program, to support his family, what those dollar figures are. So, is it a big pay raise? I have no idea. I have no idea what Nick Mitchell makes. Outside money, definitely be a pay raise from Grandview to Iowa State. But does he bring Reedy with him? Does he bring the other coaches with him? I think Reedy's primed for a head coaching job as well somewhere. But I think he's really happy with Nick Mitchell. Those two are great together, and as far as I can tell, they're just really at the same level of what they want out of their program and their kids and everything. So, Iowa State. Anything else? Pat Downey. Pat Downey, in the midst of all of this, is coming out and he's saying that he might go somewhere his senior year. His third D1 transfer. I don't even know if you can do that, what the rules are. You lose your coach, obviously that has got to be a good reason to the NCAA to allow you to do that. But if you're a program and you see a kid doing this on social media, if if there was a recruit out there doing that, would a D1 program really want somebody that is saying what he's saying at their program? Would it be toxic? Would a program take Pat Downey right now if they could take him? A big program.
Are you asking that question to me?
Yeah.
Whew. It's so hard to tell what's going on with Pat Downey. I think that's kind of the case with everyone. Pat Downey's putting it out there on Twitter that he was ready to go for that Oklahoma State duel. Coaches decided to not let him go, right? He puts it out there that it was a coaching staff decision. Well, then Kevin Jackson comes into his press conference and says, Downey's ankle's been hurt. He was concerned about what Nolan Boyd does, and he said he wasn't comfortable going out there, so we made the decision to not start him. So, was it Pat Downey was 100% ready to go and the coaches held him out, or was it Pat Downey wasn't in the right frame of mind to go and the coaches said, this guy isn't, it's not going to be in his best interest to put him out there? It kind of, it put KJ in a tough spot when he comes out and says that. And I don't think you ever want your athlete undermining you as a coach. So I feel like that just puts you in a tough position, and it's hard to know who's telling the truth? Is that coach just trying to protect his athlete? What's going on? You don't know the whole story, even if you have two sides talking.
I'm just glad we've got 2 months left of this. It's going to be like this every single day of him just going off on Twitter. Definitely it creates, I'll say, a buzz around him. Like more people, like no one's going to watch probably an Iowa State duel, but they probably will watch now because of Pat Downey. Figure out if he's actually going to wrestle a match if he goes out there. He registered for the Dave Schultz. Candace Dorr told me he's not there. So we thought maybe we'd see him wrestling this weekend, but he's not. So, man, Iowa State is just in a weird spot right now. And
just crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy up there. And lots of positives, lots of negatives, and it's kind of hard to, I think if you're an Iowa State fan, you just have to hold on to these redshirt freshmen and the incoming recruits. If you can hold on to them and get to bring a new coach in or have Travis in there for a little while, you're gonna a little sign of the relief. But I think every single day that they don't really figure out who the head coach is, the more and more your stomach is turning of, when are we going to hear from Verclaren? When are we going to hear from Candace Dorr that he decides that he wants to leave? That's killer for your program. You talk about Cale Sanderson leaving Iowa State with his recruits taking to Penn State. You have possible blowback of losing kids that are already on the program and kids that were coming in, multiple kids. So they got to get this right, and don't know what the right answer is. That's why I'm not an athletic director. A lot of people on Twitter think they're athletic directors, right? So be interesting to see what they decide to do. But
we'll be following it, man. We'll be covering it like crazy.
Yeah, this is what we live for. But let's.
Let me just add this in my final comment that never ever did I expect. We haven't been around the block too long, but this is our first head coaching replacement, if you will. And I never expected that this was just going to be so much work, so much like it's 100 mile an hour, and usually I think we're going 100 mile an hour, but I felt like last night was a whole new level of how fast stuff was going. So craziness, Tony.
Yeah. So if you haven't had an opportunity to check that out, we've got some of those commit news on the website, and we also dropped 1A and 2A final rankings. Our high school rankings with sectionals coming up this week. These guys will have their final predictions. Lars and Eric will have their final predictions when they see the brackets and everything. But if they feel like the state tournament happened today, throw out sectionals, throw out districts. This is how it would happen. One thing that I know they don't do is they look at the sectionals, look at the districts. If there's 3 ranked guys, they don't leave a guy out, which I think is probably the right way to do it. If you want your percentages as a ranker to be more on point, then you do look at that. But that's not the way that our guys have always done it. Start of the season, if you're not wrestling, if you're hurt, you're not ranked. This is how it would finish if it was happening today. So that's looking at these rankings. Lisbon, Don Bosco. This is 1A is always fun. There's tons and tons of freaking 1A fans, and to have a tight race like this with Lisbon and Don Bosco is going to make those sessions really intense, and I can't wait to be at the well for the 1A sessions.
And crazy enough, number 3 Missouri Valley was our number 1 in the last set. And Lisbon fans, we hear you, just so you know. I was even getting it at the Iowa duel, Tony. I didn't tell you this, but I had a couple Lisbon fans, alumni, approach me, asking me who did the rankings and why we moved Lisbon down to number 2 in our previous set. So we hear you, Lisbon fans. We do a point total to calculate these top 10 teams, just plugging it into a matrix. It's not predictions, how we rank our top 10 teams, just kind of getting that out there. But this race is going to be fun, Tony. I don't know. Its top 3 teams are all really good. Lisbon obviously has that top-heavy talent with the 2 Seabrick brothers. Cale Happel. I'm trying to think who else they got in there. McLaughlin's a returning runner-up. He's a good, he's a guy that can make a run for them, really separate them from the pack. But I don't know. I don't even know who I think is going to win.
Yeah, that 138 pounds just has been crazy. Seeing Chase kind of go up and down throughout the year. Another weight class that is insane is 106. You got Kimball, Seabrick, Wilson, all really kind of trading spots. One person loses to one, then the other one, and it's just that weight class has been insane. I think the Lloyd Happel matchup, if we see that again, I think it will be a little bit closer than the original one. 120 pounds is insane. Cable Fox, Brady Kiner, Brock Henderson. Brock Henderson at 3. So 120 pounds is that one is going to be insane. That could hopefully, these guys, this is going to be a semifinal. Hopefully we get to see at least one of them on one opposite side of the bracket so we can get a pretty good finals. But Tatum, Portis, those guys are all, in that hunt as well. But 1A, there's nothing better than 1A wrestling. And I like to see this Lisbon Don Bosco because they both have insane fan base following, and Don Bosco handled that duel pretty well a couple weeks ago. But we all know tournaments and duels are a different story. But 2A though, New Hampton is on another level. They have a tough district though, Ross. If they have a couple guys that falter, Solon, Creston, Atlantic could sneak in there. So but it is New Hampton's to lose, don't you think?
100%. 100%. I got to watch New Hampton at the Cedar Rapids Jefferson invite. They took it to Fort Dodge. Second time they beat Fort Dodge that year in a tournament setting. Their whole lineup, is solid. They have those hammer big names, Gertz, Millage, Phi, Robinson, all, those guys that are probably going to place pretty high for them on the podium. But even their upper weights, I mean, they might not be as highly ranked, but they're still pretty solid. I mean, I guess Ryan Gorman's number 2, but I'm thinking of like their 82, their 220 pounders. They don't, they can still surprise you. So I think they just got a really deep team. They got 14 guys really. They're just a complete lineup. And that's going to set them apart from Solon, who has 7 really good guys.
Well, so one last thing here I want to get before we got to go is the Valley versus Fort Dodge duel. It's coming up on Thursday, tomorrow. We're going to have that live on iawrestle.com. Going to have some pretty good matchups there, depending on what Nick Oldham does at 106 pounds. Number 4, he bump up where he has been in duels. Russell Drew Bennett, number 1. And you got Noah Hughes Riley, Brody Teskey. He's just running through everybody. And then, 52, Joe Nicholson, Grant Stotts. Could they bump up to Russell Cade Lara? That will be some interesting matchups. You got Lick that's back in the lineup with Connor Corbin. And so there's a few interesting matchups. I'll be kind of curious to see what Fort Dodge puts out there. And if they try to make this a competitive duel, they have the tools to bump people to specific spots where I think they can pick up some bonus points. But you can check that out on iWrestle tomorrow night, probably around 7:30 on pay-per-view on our website, and we'll be dropping that to you. But as everyone prepares for sectionals on Saturday, we'll be previewing that and talking about that throughout Saturday. You can follow us on social media. Ross, you got anything else for us here? Obviously Iowa's wrestling Wisconsin, but we don't have time to hit it all here.
Wisconsin and Minnesota. Minnesota duel will be on BTN this week. I'm going to try and do something new for the Iowa duel, so be looking forward to that. And Nick Ryder will be covering the UNI crew. Can't remember who they're dueling this week, but should be pretty fun, Tony.
Sounds great. Well, we'll keep you up to date on all the news in Ames, Iowa. hopefully Iowa State can keep the recruits they've got landed and the kids that they've got on the program. That would absolutely be horrible if we saw people go out of the state. We want to keep them here in Iowa. Yeah, but you can follow us on social media at IE Wrestle and keep up to date with everything. With sectional postseason wrestling, we got a lot of stuff planned for you for state wrestling tournament. We're 15 days away from the first whistle at the individual state tournament. You know where to find us. You know where to get the best coverage in Iowa right here at iewrestle.com. For Ross Barczyk, Tony Hager, thanks for listening.